Greetings there, my friends and audience. Cheers.
Cheers.
We're going British today. This is not quite a pub, I beg your pardon, and I ain't got no monocle, but we have with us our very talented and venerated, because she's a little on the older side, venerated young lady named Beryl McDonald. And she hails from a place you've never heard of called London, UK. So today we're going to explore what London was like in her heyday, World War II, and growing up in the streets of, what was your part of London called?
The borough was called Willesden. They've changed everything. It's now called Brent, but
Brent.
it's up in the northwest corner of London.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
So, and I think when I was growing up, I didn't really have any contact with the West End, the big fancy part of London with where all the theaters were.
Oh.
So it was really more like
Chantilly and Piccadilly Circus in that part?
Yeah, no, I never went there as a child.
Okay, I just remember the stations in Oxford
Yeah.
from you have a wonderful subway line.
Oh yes, yeah.
So why don't you, since most of our audience has never visited Brent, could you give us a kind of a visual description of what your street, on the street where I lived, sort of like My Fair Lady style?
Well, back in those days, there wasn't as much traffic as there would be now, and so we could play in the street and didn't worry much about cars.
What about horses?
Just there were horses, yeah, there were still horses. They came around with the coal truck, I think. It was pulled by these very large horses that delivered coal, because everybody heated their house with coal.
Is that where we got the rhyme, Old King Cole was a merry old soul?
No, wrong kind of coal.
Okay.
But there was a main street where all the buses, and that was busy. There was a lot of traffic up on the main road, but the side streets were the houses and where people lived.
Let me ask if you remember, I'm sure that the speeds of cars, the old style cars of the 40s and 50s, was a bit slower than today. What would an average car, and I know you would drive on the right side with the steering wheel instead of the left side in Britain, what would be the average mileage of a car in those days when you were growing
I don't
up?
know. I don't
25,
think
30
people
miles an
drove
hour?
much over 30 miles an hour.
Take heed. Can you endure 30 miles an hour? Oh, they go beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, good. Do you remember your first car? You got your first car in Britain?
No. I didn't have a car. Actually, you know, you really didn't need a car in London because we had wonderful transportation system.
Yeah, the metro.
And no, my father never had a car, but my oldest brother bought a car, and then the war came, and I think he just barely learned to drive it, and they chopped off all the petrol rationing, so he couldn't drive it until the war was over.
You need to have petrol, which is oil. I remember, and lift is an elevator. Lift.
Oh yes,
we call
lift.
Lift.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think they call water closet WC for a bathroom.
No, we didn't. We
Privy?
called it we usually called it the lav.
The lav.
For the lavatory.
Okay. If during the course of the show you have to take a trip to the lav, we'll excuse you. You don't even need to get a pass to leave the room here. So there we go and all. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about, let's talk about what kind of toys you played with in the UK when you were a little girl.
Oh, toys.
It's all spontaneous. I don't make it up. We go along.
Yeah, well, I had a lovely doll that was made in Germany. Beautiful big China head doll. And my sister and I had a doll house that we played with. And outside we played with a lot of ball games, small balls, you know.
Not rugby.
We didn't play football or anything like that, but little balls we played. Tennis balls, little rubber balls.
You play jacks?
I had a scooter, you know.
Yes.
Well, they're popular now. The little kids are going around them, you know. You just put one foot on and scoot off down the road. And then bicycles. I didn't have a bike, but my older brothers had bikes. Always could find a bike to ride.
Now, I do remember seeing the show Mary Poppins. I think that took place in Britain. I think she was a nanny.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
And she used to ride a bicycle with her long hoop skirt around town, as I recall.
Well, that was that. I think that was what, Victorian time. I believe
Mm.
that was before my time. But yeah, we did ride
King,
bicycles.
was
with
King
skirts.
George the king when you grew? King George V?
When I was a little girl,
Yeah.
George V was
With the
king.
beard.
Yes, yes,
Right,
and
I remember from my stamp collection.
and when he died, and we had to study the coronation and all the different crowns and the orb and the scepter and all the
Right, right.
regalia, I think they called it, and we had studied that in school. And when King George VI became king,
Just because Edward passed up the throne.
well,
Someplace
yeah,
in
well,
there.
you know, Edward, that was
The
a
Duke,
scandal,
yeah,
but
the Duke.
I was
he-
too
he-
young to understand
right.
all that stuff.
He got the hots for some divorced lady, I think you'd say, in proverbial Yankee street talk.
Well, she had three husbands, I think,
I
or
lo-
two anyway.
I lost count of that one.
Two. So I was not really aware of that
Okay.
scandal, but I do
Right.
remember the king dying and the new king and the little princesses, you
Yeah.
know, becoming
There were Princess Elizabeth and
and
Princess Margaret.
Margaret Rose, yes.
Right, yeah.
Uh,
Okay. And how about Mary was the Queen Mother?
yeah, Mary was.
She lived a long time.
Yes, she did. Yes, very severe lady, I think, or she looked severe anyway.
What, that was your impression of her? What was she known for, Queen
Oh.
Mother Mary?
Queen.
Queen Mother, I think
I
they
don't
used to
know
call her.
of anything other than that
Okay.
she was the queen, the king's wife. Just-
And then in 1953, Princess Elizabeth ascended to the throne and became queen.
yes,
And I was aware of that because it's a big, spectacular extravaganza on black and white television in those days,
yes,
with the horses and the coaches and all.
yes.
And her concert was Prince Philip. What could you tell us about Prince Philip?
Well, I was living over here
Oh,
by then.
but you
and
followed
yes, but I do remember the royal wedding.
it. Mm-hmm.
I listened to it on the radio,
Mm.
and I think we had to get up very early in the morning because it was live. And I just sort of vaguely remember lying in bed in the dark listening to the radio account of the coronation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it was televised. I don't think it was. Maybe it was, but or filmed or something.
I
Must
think
have been filmed.
I think it kind of was.
So.
Now, Philip was of Greek ancestry, I believe.
Yes, but he's also descended from Queen Victoria.
Aha,
So, you know, those royal families all over Europe could have
intermixed.
intermarried. So.
right, yes. Okay. So one of the things we want to feature in this show was what was life like during World War II when the Nazis had already conquered France and most of the mainland before VE Day and Normandy invasion, and Britain was trying to hold on alone to the last vestige of Europe, so to speak, besides Switzerland being neutral and never conquered.
Yeah.
And you were very much alive in those days.
Oh, yes.
Tell us what it was like, and we could also mention your book,
Yeah,
Once Upon
well,
a War.
I had so many questions about what it was like to grow up during a war. And I said, well, yes, you know, all sorts of stuff's written, but mostly written by people who were adults during the war.
Right.
And really, to a child, it's quite different. I don't
bet.
believe you see things the same way. This little book that I wrote, once Upon a War, growing up in the London Blitz. The first thing that happened to children was they had an evacuation program to take children out of London to the country so they would be safe. And most of the children, I think, went. I know there were just trainloads of us that went out. I went with my brother and sister,
Okay.
and we went to the town of Northampton, which is about 60 miles, I think, out of London.
It's interesting.
And that was an experience because we had to get used to living in the country, and I
different.
wasn't used to horses and cows running around.
All different things. So I don't know if anybody from the FBI or CIA or National Security Council is listening to this program, they well might be, but just in case, do you have an evacuation plan for the children and or women of Washington, D.C. and New York? If you get just an early warning, and when the sirens start to ring, do you have a plan to evacuate the young people from those major target cities? And maybe Seattle and the West Coast, because North Korea is not exactly our friends these days, and Seattle and San Francisco might well be targeted for demolition. They may not get through, but it may be something to think ahead of. Think about that. Okay, so tell us what Once Upon a War is all about and some of the insights you want to share with our friends here.
To me, being evacuated was kind of an adventure. I think perhaps smaller children were afraid of leaving their home and family, but this is going to be just great, I won't have my mother telling me what to do every time I turn around.
Free at last, free at last.
But I expected it to be, I thought, we'll live in a castle or something, or one of those lovely old houses with a thatched roof. Well, I didn't get either one. I got a very ordinary sort of house.
Fantasy.
But actually, I think the evacuation in the end really wasn't successful because the children went back home. There wasn't any bombing going on in London for about a year, and children just went home. In the summer they went, just didn't come back. I stayed about a year and a half, and then my brother and sister had gone back home, and this was when the Blitz was going full bore, and I said, well, I want to go home too. And so they were reopening the schools in London, which had mostly been closed, and my school had reopened, so I just packed up my bags and took the train and went back home. And first night I was home, the air raid siren went off, and and the bombs came down, crash, bang.
Were you scared when you heard the bombs?
No, not really.
No,
I think
you're made of tough stuff.
No, young people don't get scared. It's not going to get me. It's going to get the other guy.
Okay. Invincible. Not convincible, but invincible. Okay. I'm going to ask you, this question occurs, when you went home and you spoke to the other kids, did you share your adventures of being evacuated to the country and how you each experienced what it was like?
Well, most of the kids I knew had been evacuated too. They had been away and then come back just the way I had.
So did you have discussions about what it was like?
There wasn't really much to discuss.
Oh, okay. Just curious. Okay. Tell us a little bit about, a lot of our viewers out there eat to survive, and they're interested about food all around the world. So tell us what a typical British lunch or supper would be like. What would you...
During the war?
Well, both during the war and after the war.
Well...
You were rations to begin with.
During the war, everything was rationed. So it took some planning to... If you had a large family, you didn't have any more food per person, but it was a little bit easier to plan meals if you had a large family. The meat ration was very small, and I missed the chocolate bars. They all went under the counter, black market.
Tell us about the black market. A lot of people don't deal with that in this country. The stock market, yes, but the black market, not so much.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there was black market, but I think the government did a really good job of making sure that everybody got enough to eat.
Yes.
And so that you weren't. It wasn't as bad as I think it probably had been in World War One. But if you knew somebody, you could get things that. And when they started rationing clothing, it was against the law to sell clothing coupons. But if you had lots of children and not much money, you could get handouts of clothing, and you were very happy to get some money for your coupons. And so there was a pretty busy trade, and I even bought some myself.
Don't you come knocking at her door and tell her that she's retroactively under arrest. Yeah. Now, one of the heroes, I grew up in New York City during World War II, and believe it or not, my grandparents, who were born in the Ukraine, had two big pictures of war heroes. One picture was of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States for 4 terms. Didn't finish up his last term because of early death. And the other was of Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill.
Oh, yes.
Your hero.
Yeah, our Prime Minister.
So tell us a little bit about your memory of the impact of Churchill on British life.
Well, yes, he was very important. He kept us, he inspired us. We were optimistic. I didn't know anyone that, as far as I could tell, thought that we wouldn't win the war. We knew we would win the war, and Churchill was the main voice that kept us with that belief.
Excellent speaker.
Yeah, yes, it was very important. He
Radio
used to come on the radio, and of course that voice of his was just, one little anecdote I remember, he was taken to task once for saying me when he should have said I, to be, you know, correct in his grammar.
Right, yeah.
So the next time he came on the radio, he said, "This is me, and I do mean me."
Aha. See, that's called Verbal Amendment 101. Okay, so he was also a great author and a painter. Besides, a lot of people, you know, just sell him short as just a political leader and a statesman.
No.
But besides the cigar that was his trademark,
Yeah.
he did wonderful writings, chronicles
yes,
of
after
World
the
War.
war, he wrote
Yes.
all those books about the war, and yes, he was quite a good artist. Yes, I've seen pictures of his paintings, and I think he was quite a good artist.
I think he liked brandy too, I was told.
Did I what?
I think that Sir Winston likes brandy.
Oh, brandy. Well, I think he liked brandy, champagne, just about anything.
Brandy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. I heard that from
yeah, there are lots of stories about
Yes.
Winston and his booze.
Now, I don't know if you knew this, but he got his spurs, his political and military leanings in the Boer War in South Africa
Yes.
around World War I time. And so I don't know if what his rank was, captain or major brigadier or whatever, but I think that was the only war he actually fought in as a soldier.
I've seen documentaries on television, and yes, I was aware that he did fight in the Boer War.
And I think he did have some distant relatives who were actually American.
His mother was American.
Yeah, was it.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, yeah.
So he was a bi-ethnic hybrid politician, whatever we call that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let us hear something from your book so we can get you read from Once Upon a War about the evacuation, or you choose what you'd like. This is called Once Upon a War, Growing Up in the London Blitz by Beryl McDonald. I'm sure you can see it up close, but Beryl will fancy us with reading an excerpt or two. Go ahead, my dear.
You'd like me to read something? Oh,
as you wish. Right.
Well, during the war, I became a teenager, and looking back on it, it's really surprising with all that was going on that we had really quite normal teenage lives, and
call all your teenage friends to the television set right now, and they could reminisce and do this British retrospect.
Well, we went to the theaters and the cinema, and I went swimming all the time. Just to really.
Did you watch a lot of Charlie Chaplin type movies?
No, I only Charlie Chaplin. I remember was I think he made a film called The Great Dictator.
Yes, he did.
Yes, I've seen.
W.C. Fields. Is that what?
No, that's before my time, I think.
Okay.
The movies that I remember during the war were things like Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney and Deanna Durbin and of course Shirley Temple. Before the war, Shirley Temple.
I have about 6, 7 Shirley Temple videos at home. I'll be happy to share them with you if you wish.
Shirley Temple.
Yeah, the Good Ship Lollipop.
Actually, I did a little.
Not to be confused with
I did a little tap
stern
dance
wheeler
once
on the limit.
with a giant lollipop.
Yes. And Mr. Bojangles. Okay, good. So good. You were Shirley Temple. Did you also do things like Nelson Eddy and Jeanette McDonald?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember those films.
And of course, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and Sid Charisse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the first movie I ever went to was Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, Top Hat.
Oh, good. I have that right. Which is the one where he dances on the ceiling? That's Royal Wedding, I think.
Oh, I
Royal
can't
Wedding,
remember. All I
believe.
remember is Fred and Ginger dancing. And he was marvelous dancer.
One of a kind. Tell us a little bit about some American myths about Great Britain, also known as UK. What false impressions or stereotypes do we Yankees have of Britain? We're setting the record straight here and now.
Well, I think I'd like to take issue with the food thing. You know, you're always hearing this, Britain has terrible, terrible food.
Okay.
Now, that's a rumor that the French started.
Uh-oh.
Because the food was not terrible. I do think they didn't do a very good job. When I was a child, the vegetables were all overcooked. But I remember wonderful pastries and pies and roast beef and roast lamb and Yorkshire pudding
mutton.
and wonderful fish and chips. And the Yankees loved the fish and chips
Fish
during the
and
war.
chips. What kind of fish is grown?
Every kind.
Because you're an island, you're an
Yes.
island, and so there's a lot of
Fish,
maritime trade.
Yeah. During the war, of course, it wasn't so safe to go out and fish.
No, yeah.
So there was a shortage, and the fish and
U-boats.
chip shop wasn't always open.
Aha. Okay.
But yeah, they made fish and chips out of any kind of fish you want to think
Now,
of.
did you find your husband in Britain or here?
In Britain, yes, I was.
Why don't you share with us the
I
trade
was-
secrets of what you used for bait and how you
Well, I was going.
reeled them in and hooked them?
I was going
as your fish.
somewhere out of London on a train,
Right.
and the train was just terribly overcrowded. All these American soldiers were getting on, just crowding in there, and I found myself sitting next to an American soldier, but it was after dark, so I couldn't really see him. But anyway, we talked, and he asked if he could write me a letter, so I gave him my address, and then he got off.
Danger signal.
Yeah, he got off before I did. But anyway, eventually I did get a letter, and so we saw each other from time to time, and eventually we decided to get married. That was after the war, though, when we got married. So.
Where did you honeymoon?
What did I?
Where did you have your honeymoon?
Cornwall. Lovely Cornwall. Just beautiful weather and white sand and big cliffs and just.
See, so
beautiful
if you want
place.
white sand and big cliffs, go to Cornwall. How is the relationship of the dollar to the shilling these days, or the pound actually?
At that time, I believe it was $4 to the pound. But there was quite a difference of what a pound would buy and what $4 would buy.
And is it better balanced today, or? Well, now you have the euro, I guess.
Yeah,
also,
I haven't.
Kept up with that part.
I don't think England went on the euro.
Maybe not. Yeah.
No, they didn't. They went on the European Union, but not the euro currency. I don't think they ever did.
Yeah. Maybe now you said England, and that brings me to the question. The United Kingdom, I believe, consists of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Could you tell us a little bit from your knowledge and experience about the differences in the different parts of the United Kingdom? What are their customs or reputations that make each of those segments of the country different? Like, let's start with Scotland.
Yeah, well,
The Highlands.
they definitely, we always considered them separate countries. But I never went to Scotland as a child, and I never went to Wales as a child.
Yes.
But I did know lots of Scottish people who lived in London, and I knew Welsh people who lived in London.
And what were they like? What were the differences in their
Well,
values, attitudes, customs?
for the most part, the Welsh could really sing.
Ah,
Wonderful singing voices.
wow. Never knew that.
But
Oh.
but I have been to Wales more than several times, and I've been to Scotland several times on visits going over to
I'd
England.
love to visit Scotland and
Yeah.
Edinburgh and all. Did you ever get to the home of the Beatles, Liverpool?
No, I never went to Liverpool. I was up in the Lake District, which is not far from there, but
Okay.
I never actually went into Liverpool.
And did you
I
go-
don't think Liverpool's high on any tourist list.
Did you go to Nottingham, where Robin Hood is said to have started
No,
out?
I never was right in Nottingham either.
Where does King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table take place? Is that Cornwall?
Um,
I don't recall.
I think it was down in that area, but
Of course, he was a myth.
possibly Cornwall, but in the southwest part of the country. Yeah, in that area.
Now, have you ever been to Southampton, near the Pirates of Penzance, where that took place?
Well, I sailed from Southampton to come to the United States. After I was married, I came over that next summer and on a ship that was just bringing war brides.
Oh,
It was,
that sounds like an inducement.
I expected to come over on an ocean liner, you know, like the Queen Mary.
Oh.
Unfortunately, we came down to the dock, and there was this 300-foot old boat ship, and I said, "We're going all the way across the Atlantic on that?" But we did, and we made it.
Well. So, okay. Are there any? We have a little over a minute left before we bow out and go. But are there any closing thoughts you have about life in Britain as compared to life here in the U.S.? What has been the big dramatic change in your transition?
Well, it's a long time ago, and of course you realize I've spent most of my life here.
Correct?
My children were born here. My grandchildren were born here.
Right.
I think over the years, Americans have adopted more European and British customs and even terminology, and of course the British have taken on more Americanisms.
Okay.
So I think it's probably more of a merger of cultures.
Okay. So, and if you were to advise somebody to visit one city in Britain, would it be London or something?
Oh yes, of course, London.
Okay.
Like Samuel Johnson said, when a man is tired of London, he's tired of life.
Hear that? Okay. Cheerio, my friends out there in good old America, the colonies. We'll see you soon. Have a happy in-between. Thank you.